Okay, this lesson is entitled what we call a Koine for Judaizers. The website called Jews for Judaism. I'll include that in the description so you can look that up and see the research. Someone on there went to a great extent and made a lot of effort, invested a lot of time and energy to disprove a 360-day calendar year. Prophetic Year is just now called by a lot of people. And in several of our videos, in one I referenced a book by a rabbi, this book called Biblical Literacy, and this is Language and Apologetics Outreach Ministry of Landmark Missionary Baptist Church. It's language based, and we meet here at Jacksonville, Arkansas at 2200 Marshall Road. And so I mentioned that we would do a lesson specifically targeted for those who witness to those within the theistic tradition called Judaism. And Judaism is very multivariate now, has very diverse, a lot of diversity within it. So when I referenced this book, for example, I was noticing and calling the attention to the fact that why I even have the book. This is by Rabbi Joseph Telushkin. I'll include his name in the tag words, the keywords for searching. But I called your attention to the fact that after Daniel chapter 6, he has no information provided in this book, which is on the Bible. So it's quite striking, because I'd asked someone who identified as a Judaizer. He's now passed away. But he identified as a Judaizer, and I said, well, would you ask your rabbi why you all are so upset about us accepting your Messiah? And while you're asking him, would you ask him why you all reject your own Messiah? Well, of course, you only can see the intrigue in that, because he did go and talk to his rabbi. His rabbi just gave the ambiguous answers that most people do when they try to avoid it. So I was just wanting to show, just for a few moments, how can we demonstrate an irrefutable proof for those who are perhaps primed, indoctrinated, if you will, in something called Judaism, and it has skewed their view where they cannot see clearly that which their own book says. Genesis 6 says, the Lord said, my spirit shall not always strive with man, for that he also is flesh, yet his days shall be 120 years. Now some have disputed, is that referring to a lifespan or the patient endurance of God to withhold his judgment in the cataclysm called the flood, until which time he would no longer after 120 years. That's really not what I'm working on or to settle in this. Psalm 90, remember, that's written by Moses. It says, for 1,000 years in thy sight are but as yesterday when it is past, and as a watch in the night. That's Moses. He's the author of Genesis. He also wrote Psalm 90. We'll go back here to 2 Peter chapter 3. But beloved, be not ignorant of this one thing, that one day is with the Lord as 1,000 years, and 1,000 years as one day. So we see this ratio, and we have a couple of more references we can make. But before we go any further, let's just take the data we have. We have 2 Peter, so we have 2 Peter, and that's chapter 3. We have Psalm 90. So we have that ratio established of 1 to 1,000. And we also have, because of Peter, we have 1,000 to 1, and that's a day, of course. John chapter 11, Jesus said there are 12 hours per day. And of course, we know there are 12 hours per night. Okay. And then we have Revelation speaks of a 42 months at 360 days equals 1,260. So there's the 360. But again, what's the proof? How do we demonstrate that the dear souls who of no fault of their own any more than ours, where we're born, when we're born, we come into this world, we might be raised in a family who advocate, support Judaism, and who use the Bible as a proof text to support their Judaism, like people mistakenly and ignorantly use the Bible, let's say, to support one of the endless numbers of Catholic expressions, which they don't necessarily even know that what they may be using the Bible to support today is what it was once used to refute in the past, because religions don't often help us stay current with what we're teaching today. So among Protestants, the same thing. It's more often the case that people will use this as a proof text. So when we look at Daniel, for example, that was actually referred to as I was speaking about Daniel, and that Daniel chapter 9, well, let's just say that Daniel chapter 9 and 25, for example, the decree to rebuild Jerusalem, that was March 14th, 445 BC. And then the triumphant entry of Jesus into Jerusalem was 32 AD, and that was April 6th. And we know that that was exactly 173,880 days. That's at 483 years per 360 days each. And you remember the 490 years of 70 7-year periods. So we have all the numbers we need, but what is it about even a book that, for example, if you were raised in Judaism, you wouldn't have noticed this, and you would accept as you were taught, and you were obedient to learn, and you accepted what those you trusted the most told you. But this book is 1997, so it's not that old. It's 23 years old. So here it is. I have it, and I'm in some place called Arkansas, Central Arkansas, Jacksonville, Arkansas, next to the largest C-130 base in the world, the Little Rock Air Force Base. So I have it. Anyone can get it. And notice the emendation, the if you will, revision of their text. And I would like to speed up, but this is good for you all who wish to use the language and then respect numbers in the Bible that transcend. Let's say you say, well, I would never build a witness to someone in Judaism. They might know Hebrew, as the website Jews for Judaism goes into these elaborate, ornate, seem like multi-tiered, just multi-dimensional aspects of the language. And notice that when you look at it, it can be overwhelming and daunting. But like I said, this is an apologetic and outreach website that's based on language-based. So numbers are language. We know the Hebrew language, the letters are numeric, they are pictographic and phonetic. So we have that. So what do we do if we look at this and we want to help someone recognize first that Jesus is the Messiah? Well, you can show from Daniel. You can also show from the triumphant entry to that middle of the week, that Wednesday when he was crucified, and then you can go and look at that next Sunday, that in that 7-day period where he was raised from the dead, and show that to the day their book, and remind them it's their scriptures that they identify with, it's their book that their rabbis comment and write about. So show respect and remember to keep the focus on their material as you help them use their Bible, because you won't run into very many people within Judaism that have ever even heard of using their Bible to indicate to them who the Messiah is. They just go with the talk like most people in religion. That's why you all in this class and you all that attend this church, you know how to use and want to use, so you're both willing and able to use the Bible. So when you're showing this, you can also then take care of the disagreements that they have on the earth, and you can introduce the young versus old contradiction that doesn't exist in the Bible, but you can introduce that. You can also talk about decay rates, where lifespan was up to 1,000 years, and today it's approximately 100 years, which I thought that was interesting. Psalm 90 speaks of 80 years. Life has been reduced to 80 years, and in Genesis 6 it was speaking of 120 when the different average is 100. But we have people that prove the point, because those who live beyond 100 are become world famous and are on even our social media platforms. They're broadcast around the world, and people that bounce up toward 120 prove the point that we now are decaying, dying at 10 times more quickly than those before the flood, the cataclysm. So remind them of the decay rate, show them the ratio, tell them that at 6,250 years at 12 hours per day, as Jesus said. Remind them of Exodus 20, where man works 6 days, that's 12-hour days. And then show that if you simply add the night as far as time, that 12-hour night, there, 12-hour night, you get this approximately 12,500. If they still don't believe in the 360, let's say they are secularists, let's say they embrace modern science, let's say they accept, they don't notice decay rates, they don't notice the ratio. You can speak to them from the word science, which is from the Koine text word gnosis, knowledge, and science is the Latin word for knowledge. And I'm not talking about false knowledge, we're talking about Bible knowledge, knowledge we can know. Then you can tell them that if you multiply that by 360 days, you get 4.5 million days. And that takes care of the 1 day side of the ratio. Well, then if you multiply this by 1,000 years, well, it's okay. So multiply it by 1,000 years, you get the 4.5 billion. And when you talk about old, how old, that's decay, the amount of decay. So now you can show them that recent Earth creation event as far as time, and that according to a ratio, that science doesn't know that ratio except by calculations through the technology. That you can then remind them that calculus was a product produced by two theologians, Newton and Leibniz, two theologians, two Bible believers. So calculus is a product of theology. Then the understanding of ratios, decay rates, all now are part of the ascertained through technology, which is a product of mathematics, which came from theology. Now you're really building a strong case for them to notice that not only can they look at their Bible, at their own prophecy when Jesus came, that he's their Messiah. Not only can you show by using the numbers at 360-day year, not only can you introduce them to decay rates and lifespans as they were changed and announced the change at that hinge there in Psalm 90 that Moses wrote. Not only can you show them in the New Testament, the book of Revelation, where it speaks of the 1260 days, the 3.5 years. Not only can you now show them that recent earth creation, which they might ridicule that, you can now distinguish that. You can then show them that the Bible differentiates between the amount of decay. You can give them examples in the Bible where something would decay much more rapidly, as a fig tree being cursed and immediately it died, a water being processed into wine immediately, rather than the long process that would otherwise take. You can see how God had removed the accelerated the decay rate of man and took away the 1,000-year day period of time. The word day, you can remind them that that word in Hebrew is the same word for time. You can help them in all these ways. Matter of fact, this when you go over this, and I would say iterate it, deliberately practice it, and study it, you can really help them. And then if they say, yeah, but what about the universe? Remember that you can then go this direction when you want to show them that the Bible has knowledge of the universe as well as the earth, as far as the amount of death, decay that has accrued. And you can remind them that 2/3 of energy is dark energy, dead, 2/3 of matter's dead, that all that we see in what we know now through technology and telescopes, we see these things dying, colliding, black holes, we see galaxies and all that. You can then come this direction and take the 4.5 billion years, because here when you multiply 1,000,000 days by 1,000 years, you just change the million to billion and your unit of measure from days to years, and that's real easy to do that. And then here you go this direction, you have the 4.5 times 1,000 days. And I've said this in other videos. You can review those as well. You can go to a video about a rationale for recent Earth creation. But at 1,000 days, that's approximately 2.78 years to give you a multiplier. And then that would equal, going this direction, 12.5 billion years of decay. And then when you can show them the correlation between these numbers, and they'll be quite impressed. The thing about it is gaining their attention long enough for something as small and concise as this board, which is 4 feet by 3 feet, which is just a few notes. I've got little cards over here that I've used in class, and if you just notice, it just take you a few seconds, or you can mark your Bible like I do, and it makes it a lot easier when you witness to someone, especially if you will teach a class or you want to make a video. You can then say, how would I speak to someone in Judaism, because I don't use Hebrew, I don't know their customs, I don't know their traditions, I don't know their views of creation, young versus old, because that's different among them. For example, among Catholicism, a very famous apologist, Catholic apologist, speaks of, as if it's no concern or implication, the fact that among Catholic, those who identify themselves as Catholic, that they differ on that, they disagree on evolution, they disagree on all types of things. There are just a few things he insists that they must agree that place them within the purview of Catholic theology. But as far as the rest, they separate that and don't see that. So in Judaism, you'll find that same thing. You'll find such, but now here's one core way, a universal way to speak and communicate in such a manner that you apprehend their attention. Matter of fact, you can sit and buy their coffee, and in the time it takes, now we've only been involved in this for 18 minutes, and it's only because I'm explaining more than you'll have to, but you can take any one of these aspects. But this is how you can prove biblically, then from the theology, then from the science, which is a branch of theology that is calculus, then from the technology that goes and measures, that gives the same data that we have in the Bible. But the important thing is we're not looking at an argument about the age of the earth. We're actually defining that. We're not arguing about when the earth was created. We're defining that and demonstrating that recent earth creation does not negate the amount of decay and age. We can show the difference. Now, they'll be quite impressed with that, because you don't run across people very often who do as we were taught in the Missionary Baptist Seminary, to point number 4 in the Historical Holistic Hermeneutics textbook, to define your terms. Define your terms. What do you mean by young? What do you mean by old? And then when you bring the Bible in and you read emphasis of the Bible is on the brevity of life, the judgment and consequence of sin, and how death follows. And God takes what we do very seriously and has reduced our lifespan from the 1,000-year judgment to now we have 100 years, so 90% of 100% of mankind's life expectancy has been removed. Now that, when it's of no interest to someone, you're dealing with someone that is disconnected from the reality of their own mortality. So as you breach that topic and begin to engage them, remember their theistic tradition, Judaism, is a lot like someone's Catholicism, Protestantism, Islam, New Age, occult, or whatever their denominationality might be. They've been primed, they've already been told what this is, they already have a lens crafted, they have a view that's skewed, and it doesn't necessarily reflect anything that even their own book, their own literature might say, and they may not even be aware or even question their own rabbi who willingly, deliberately omitted data that would prove this. So I submit the Bible as proof for those in Judaism that Jesus the Christ is the Messiah, the one that they've rejected. And I submit their book, their commentary on the Bible, and then I submit the content of their literature, and that way I submit the case of the Old Testament as it points to Jesus and proves precisely who he is and has the veracity and credibility to prove that the Bible has knowledge of that which men are just now discovering in our contemporaneous culture. So you have a blessed day and enjoy this. Use this video often, review it, practice it, iterate it. I'll write these things down on a napkin and people will keep the napkin, or you can write it on a card when you're witnessing to someone, and they'll keep that card. So happen to have a index card in your pocket with an ink pen and just start doodling, and they'll say, what are you doing? You say, well, I'm just practicing and rehearsing how to prove that the earth, when it was created, and then how old it is, and then how much decay there is in the universe, and how long ago that may have taken place, and what has accrued since then. And you'll have their attention. So, but this was specifically Koine for Judaizers.